Forget everything you think you know about silver. Seriously, this isn't a story about your grandmother's silverware or some dusty old coins. This is the story of an invisible wall. A wall that's being built right now around the single most critical metal for our energy future. It's a wall designed to control technology, to dictate the speed of the green revolution, and to completely rewrite the rules of global power. This is the story of the Great Silver Wall.
The era of cheap silver is over, and it is never coming back. Now, that isn't some wild prediction. It's a statement of fact. It's an acknowledgement that the fundamental laws of this market have been, well, completely and irreversibly shattered. For the last 50 years, our entire technological world was built on one very simple, very dangerous assumption: that silver would always be there and would always be cheap. That assumption has just vanished into thin air.
I want you to remember this day, January 1st, 2026, because on that day, the global supply chain for silver wasn't just tweaked or disrupted. It was deliberately broken. A new policy slammed into place, creating a strategic chokehold on the one metal we cannot live without. And believe me, this was no accident. This was the opening move in a global game of chess, and most of the world didn't even know it was playing.
So this Great Silver Wall, it isn't made of bricks and mortar. It's far more sophisticated than that. It's a meticulously built cage of export controls, a geopolitical weapon forged from paperwork. And the thing is, this wasn't some surprise attack out of the blue. No, this was the final act in a multi-year dress rehearsal, a cold and calculated strategy to turn the world's dependency into a powerful tool.
You can see the pattern plain as day if you just look back. It started quietly, back in 2023, a little warning shot with controls on gallium and germanium, critical for semiconductors. Then, in 2025, the target shifted to EV batteries, with new restrictions on graphite and antimony. Each move was a test, a probe, to see how the world would react. It was proving a point. Geopolitical leverage was now more important than export money. The Silver Wall of 2026, well, that was just the grand finale. The final move to control a metal so fundamental it underpins almost everything we consider modern.
This isn't just chaos, It has a name. It's called strategic resource diplomacy. It's a cold, calculated doctrine where you control the faucet for the materials the entire world needs to function. With just a turn of the valve, you can reward your friends, and you can absolutely starve your rivals, all without firing a single bullet. It's the art of turning simple dirt and rock into a devastating weapon of state power.
And here's where the strategy gets really, really clever, and frankly, dangerous. The power here doesn't come from mining the silver. Nope. Countries like Mexico and Peru, they do all the hard work of pulling it out of the ground. The real power, the choke point, is in the refining. For decades, China strategically became the world's smelter. They'd import all this raw, dirty ore from everywhere else and turn it into the ultra-pure industrial metal that everyone from Apple to Tesla needs. So by restricting the export of the finished product, they built the perfect trap. The raw materials keep flowing in, but the refined lifeblood of modern industry, well, that suddenly stops flowing out.
Okay, so let's flip the coin and look at the other side of this crisis: demand. Because while all this geopolitical maneuvering is squeezing supply, there's a technological revolution happening that's causing demand to absolutely explode. We're entering what some people are calling the solar singularity. It's this strange, paradoxical moment where the very act of making solar panels more efficient is creating a demand shock for silver that nobody was prepared for.
And this is the paradox right here. Look at this. The old solar cell technology, called PERC, it was pretty frugal. It used about 10 milligrams of silver for every watt of power. But we're always pushing for more efficiency, right? Well, the new TOPCon designs need up to 70% more silver. And the absolute latest tech, HJT cells, they can demand nearly 3 times as much. So in our race to make solar power better and cheaper, we accidentally created this ravenous, unforeseen hunger for silver.
200 million ounces. Just let that number sink in for a second. That's the projected demand every single year from the solar industry alone. We're talking about nearly a quarter of the entire world's annual silver supply being swallowed up by just one industry. And this isn't optional demand, something that can be put off till next year. It's a non-negotiable structural need, because without that silver, the green energy transition just grinds to a halt, period.
Now, the obvious question you're probably asking is, well, why not just switch to something cheaper, like copper? And for years, that was the easy answer from all the analysts. It was the get-out-of-jail-free card. But it's turned out to be a total technological mirage. In the real world, in long-term tests that simulate decades of rain and heat, copper just fails. It oxidizes, it corrodes, and it doesn't stick to the silicon wafers nearly as well as silver. If you're a company that's offering a 25-year warranty on your panels, that kind of risk is completely unacceptable.
So you've got supply being weaponized and demand going vertical. What about all the stockpiles? I mean, for decades, we've all operated under this comforting idea that there are these massive vaults in London and New York, just stuffed to the gills with silver, ready to handle any shortage. Well, that myth is now evaporating right before our very eyes.
The proof is right here, in the numbers from the COMEX exchange in New York. This is the silver that's legally available for immediate delivery. In 2020, those vaults held about 150 million ounces. By the end of 2025, that number had collapsed to just 35 million. This isn't a slow leak, people. This is a full-on hemorrhage of physical metal, draining out of the financial system and into the real world where it gets used.
And here's why that drop is so incredibly important. You see, there are two kinds of silver in these vaults, and this is the shell game they play. Eligible silver is just metal somebody is storing there. It's like a car in a public parking garage. It's there, but it's not for sale. Registered silver, though, that's the good stuff. That's the metal that's actually available to be delivered to a buyer who wants it. It's the cash in the bank's drawer. And as you just saw, that drawer is getting dangerously close to empty. The total amount is just smoke and mirrors. The registered number is the only one that truly matters.
And this strain is being massively accelerated by a new force in the market. India has emerged as this ferocious, absolutely relentless buyer of physical silver. It's a perfect storm of their own booming industrial and solar demand mixed with this huge cultural appetite for the metal. The nation is basically acting like a giant sponge, just sucking up physical bars from London and Switzerland. And when that metal gets locked away in vaults in Mumbai, the key is effectively thrown away. Once silver goes to India, it almost never comes back to the global market.
All of this brings us to the breaking point. You see, a paper market, where trillions of dollars in derivatives are traded every day, is built on one giant bluff. It's the promise that for every single digital contract, there's a real physical ounce of metal somewhere to back it up. So what happens when that bluff finally gets called?
I mean, think about it. It is the ultimate nightmare scenario for any commodities exchange. It's a run on the bank, where buyers suddenly stop trusting the paper promises and they all show up demanding the real thing. When that physical metal is gone, the entire system that we use to price everything just faces a complete, catastrophic failure.
And if you think this is just some wild theoretical scenario, it's not. It has already happened. In March of 2022, the London Metal Exchange did the unthinkable. During a massive short squeeze in the nickel market, they tore up the rulebook, they halted all trading, and then they retroactively canceled billions of dollars in legitimate trades just to save one huge powerful player from going bankrupt. The precedent was set in stone. When the system is about to break, the exchange will protect itself and its biggest members, not the market. The emergency exit is already built in.
So the end game, well, it becomes terrifyingly clear. First, the unstoppable force of real industrial demand completely overwhelms the tiny amount of deliverable supply. Prices don't just go up, they go vertical. They spike to insane levels. With its vaults empty, the exchange has only one card left to play. They declare force majeure, basically an act of God, and they settle all remaining contracts in cash. And in that one moment, the paper price you see on your screen becomes a complete and utter fiction, totally disconnected from the brutal reality of trying to find an actual bar of silver in the real world.
Now, I know the ghost of 1980 is probably looming over this story, the year the famous Hunt brothers tried to corner the silver market. It's really easy to hear all this and just dismiss it as another speculative bubble. But if you do that, you are fundamentally misunderstanding what is happening today. This time, it's different.
Look, the 1980 squeeze was driven by pure speculation. It was a couple of billionaires using a ton of borrowed money in a market that actually had a surplus of metal. Today's squeeze, it's driven by necessity. It's being driven by nations and giant corporations who physically need the metal to build things, and they need it in a market that's already in a deep structural deficit. And that leads us to the most important difference of all, the solution. The Hunts were stopped by a simple rule change, but you cannot solve a physical shortage with a rule change. The only thing that can fix this is a price so high that it finally and brutally destroys demand.
So what does this new world actually look like? What are the real-world consequences when silver transforms from just another precious metal into a strategic energy metal? Well, the implications are absolutely massive, and they're going to touch almost every single part of our modern lives. The fallout is going to ripple through everything. The price of every single electronic device you own, from your phone to your TV to your car, it will inevitably go up. The whole green energy transition, which was built on this dream of cheap solar power, is going to face a very, very brutal reckoning. Nations will stop treating silver like a commodity, they'll start hoarding it like a strategic reserve, just like they do with gold, and the entire philosophy of global manufacturing is going to have to change. This fragile era of just-in-time delivery will die, and it'll be replaced by a hardened just-in-case mindset, where the only thing that matters anymore is having the physical metal in your own possession.
You see, what we're all witnessing isn't just a market going crazy. It's so much bigger than that. This fight for control over silver is the opening shot in a brand new kind of global conflict, a resource war. One that's not fought on battlefields, but in refineries and on shipping logs and through export licenses. It's a lot quieter, but believe me, its consequences could be just as profound.
The basic assumptions that built our modern world for the past half-century have just been shattered. An unfillable deficit, a weaponized supply chain, and an explosive new demand have all converged to create the perfect storm. The Great Silver Wall isn't just a policy, it's a paradigm shift. And as that wall gets higher, it forces all of us to ask one simple, critical question. In a new world that's going to be defined by physical scarcity, who will control the materials that build our future?